On this episode of Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery, I'm going to continue to talk about what I would do if I were starting from scratch with my fee-based financial planning practice.
Running a successful fee-based financial planning business is tough, and escaping the shackles of a commission-based financial planning practice is terrifying. When all you want to do is learn from those who know. Learn from financial planners who are there on the front lines doing it each and every day. What if you could just open their kimono and take a look inside to learn what works and what doesn't? Now there's a place where the secrets to running a fee-based financial planning business are revealed to those who believe. Fee-based financial planning mastery. Ease your mind.
Hi everyone, it's Scott Plaskett here, and thanks for joining me. In this podcast, you will learn what's working and what's not in the world of fee-based financial planning. In each episode, I'm going to open my kimono and let you take an insider's look at what's working and what's not in my practice to help you take your business to the next level. I've been a fee-based certified financial planner since the early 90s, so believe me, I know the challenges you're facing. So get ready to learn not from a teacher, coach, or guru, but from a colleague who's on the front lines just like you. And I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my email internet newsletter to get the most up-to-date tips on how to build and grow your fee-based financial planning practice by going to feebasedfinancialplanningmastery.com. You know, I've had a really interesting week, and it really had a lot to do with the fact that we spent a lot of time recently on really documenting all of the workflows that we incorporate into running our practice and running the back office and, you know, how we manage our database and all that sort of thing. So we really spent a lot of time, and I've spent a lot of time over the years sort of mapping all that out. And we then hired a company to come in and customize how our back office systems run so that things get triggered automatically, and there's a lot of automation that takes place, and it was really quite amazing. So I guess the thing that was important about this week was how a small idea really brought in a new client to me, and this new client, you know, generated around a $5,000 fee. It was really obviously it made sense, and after having brought them in and done all the work with our systems and spent the money to have them all customized, it just got paid for itself right then and there. So what did we do? Well, basically, I've really always focused on how important it is to document your process, to map it out so that everybody gets the same experience when they work with us. So workflow is important. So what we've done is we use Salesforce.com, and we've used in the past, you know, Maximizer and Goldmine and all these other programs, but we've really now gone over to Salesforce, and I've talked about that in the past because it's cloud-based and it's just a very, very powerful program. But what we've done is along the way, we've mapped out how our process works. So what happens at meeting number 1? What happens at meeting number 2? And we know what tasks need to be triggered in advance of all this happening. Plus, as a result of working with Salesforce, they, you know, the way the methodology and the logic behind how it tracks everything is important because, you know, they look at things as, it's a little bit different, I think, than the way I was using Goldmine before. But in essence, you've got your, you know, households, and then you've got the contacts in your households, and that's, you know, pretty traditional information. But the thing that we now do, which is a little bit different than what we did before, was we track the opportunities associated with those individual contacts. So as I'm going through the financial planning process with clients, number 1, our first opportunity is the comprehensive financial plan. And so everything starts with that comprehensive financial plan. And so we've mapped out for a financial plan, what stages does a financial plan go through? We've itemized all those stages. And then as we progress through those stages, certain things get triggered on our system, which assign tasks to various staff members. And so those staff members know exactly what to do and when to do it. So we start off with that, but as I'm going through the financial planning process, I'm able to identify other opportunities, things like investment opportunities and insurance opportunities and executive compensation opportunities, and just a lot of other opportunities that we've identified are common to our business. Now, in how we set all that up, so we track opportunities. That's really the key, is tracking the opportunities and not necessarily tracking the individual contacts or households. That's important for all that tombstone information, but the opportunities from a business standpoint are where the revenues come from. So taking a big step back, everybody starts coming onto our system as a lead. And when they come on as a lead, then that lead is just sort of tracked, and we sort of nurture that lead until we can get that lead to commit to coming in for a first meeting. Once that first meeting is identified, we convert that into an opportunity, and the opportunity is a financial planning meeting. So they come in for the opportunity, and we work through the stages of that opportunity to get them to the point where they're either, if we feel it's appropriate to move forward, we recommend that they do. If we don't feel it's appropriate, then we recommend that they go somewhere else, and we refer them out to somebody else. But identifying that opportunity, now nurturing and tracking that opportunity is what's important through the different stages that we have. Well, it was that stage tracking and some afterward reports that I track that allowed me to, when the whole customization was done, I sat down on one Monday morning, or actually no, it was on a weekend. I sat down, I took a look at my report, and it said, here are all the opportunities that have expired. And what that means on our system is the opportunities have made it past a point where we should have heard something or something should have happened. So it brings it up and it says, hey, you need to now touch this opportunity and try and move it forward. So that came up. It gave me a list of people to contact. I then reached out and contacted, and as a result of our system catching that opportunity and bringing it to my attention, I contacted the opportunity or the individual. He came in, he said, oh, thanks so much for reaching out to me and touching base. It's been pretty busy, and so we haven't been able to get back to you. Let's get back together. We got back together and went through. And as a result, it was just a perfect opportunity for our business. He decided he wanted to move forward with programs that we offer, and it was just wonderful. So, it was the success with what I'm talking about here was the fact that we identified how to track everything, and then we used the system as it's supposed to be used. So we customized it for that purpose, and as a result of doing that, it all started to work. And it was really amazing how I sat down, I pushed one button, it showed me all the opportunities I needed to touch. I touched the opportunities, and as a result, something came from it. So, having a system and working your system and working your workflows and work processes so that let the system bring it to your attention. Because if we try to keep everything in our mind as business owners, there's so many things going on. It's very difficult to keep track of everything. So identifying what's important to keep track of, what the stages are that certain opportunities go through, and what you want to be doing at each stage. It's an amazing process how you can then have the system speak to you as opposed to you constantly going into the system looking for information. It basically reports it back to you when it's important to touch it. So it means that you're being much more efficient. So that was a real plus. And I think we're going to talk more about that in a future episode about how we go through and what the exact thing is that we go through in customizing our workflows and how we identify what things we want to work into our workflows and how that's an evolutionary process. It's not something that happens just overnight. You do constantly build on it. And so I'm always asking my staff members to identify areas that we could do things even better, how we could service even better. If we identify an area that maybe we can enhance the service offering a little bit, how can we then incorporate that into the workflow so that it happens on an automated basis? So anyways, that was a success for me. And I hope that sharing that with you gives you some motivation to sort of take a look at your work process and identify what stages do all of my opportunities go through, map out those stages, and then put a database system or a contact management system in place to track everybody who's going along those stages so that you can make sure that you don't have any opportunities slipping through the cracks.
And now for our feature segment.
Okay, so let's get on to the feature segment. This is a continuation from the previous episode where we were talking about, what I would do if I was starting from scratch. How would I would I change things? How would I run my fee-based practice? What would I do in order to get things up and running as quickly as possible? What would I need to put in place? Well, in the last episode, we covered various items. We basically covered the most important thing, which was a fee-based financial planning mindset. And, you are the expert, act like one. We're professionals, act like one. Fee-based financial planning really follows a process that you want to incorporate. And again, we talked about this in the previous episode, but you want to educate and discuss, go through your initial meeting number 1, initial meeting number 2. Then at that point, you get their commitment, move on to the plan presentation part 1, plan presentation part 2, and what goes into those meetings, and then move on to a 6-month or annual review program. So that we went into great detail, and you can encourage you, if you didn't listen to it already, go back to the previous episode and check that out. And that would be episode 7. Yeah, so head back to episode 7. You can check that out. Now, moving on, we said we were going to talk about, scripting your prospecting process, establishing your fees, and committing to presenting your fee to the next qualified prospect. So let's talk about this in order. So number one, we're going to talk about the scripting of your prospecting process. Now, left to your own devices, you will never present the financial planning fee to clients. If you're not used to doing it, you will find every reason in the book not to do it. So you need to set yourself up for success. If you script the meeting, you will stay on track and not allow yourself to not present the fee. Fees are for financial planning. Okay. Don't think that the fees have anything to do with investments. So while you're going through the process, you're speaking with the client and whatnot, you don't want to incorporate any discussion on product too early in the process. Product only comes once you've analyzed things. And so people are paying you to analyze their financial affairs. So everything you're talking about when it relates to a fee, the fee you're charging is for the financial planning process. Okay. If you rebate those fees, and I've just seen it too many times and it frustrates me to no end. Somebody says, oh, well, we'll charge you a financial planning fee, but if you then buy the investments, we won't charge you that fee or we'll reduce it or some way. Well, all you've done there is you've simply discounted the value of your financial plan and you're wimping out. I mean, you're basically saying to them, you're saying to yourself, I don't value the financial plan enough to have it stand alone to be worth the fee that I'm charging. And if that's the case, then you need to go back to your financial planning process and boost it up, enhance it, make it better. I was talking with a journalist the other day who was doing an article on this topic. And we were talking about this, and I said, the great thing about fee-based financial planning, if people can incorporate charging a fee for the financial planning into their practice, it's going to elevate the industry. It's going to elevate the quality of the planning that we as financial planners are doing. And that's important. That's, if we can all do this, it's going to make the industry a better place. And as I've said before in previous episodes, the industry has been tarnished. The industry is under some challenging times right now. People aren't seeing the financial industry as a great industry right now. They see it with the jaded eyes. And so anything we can do in order to help enhance and elevate the quality and value that people are receiving from financial planning, then that's going to be a good thing. So don't rebate your fees because it just simply discounts the value of your financial plan. So scripting the meeting is important. So what you literally want to do is write out, as if you were writing, lyrics to a song, write out exactly what you would say and when. So how would you start the meeting? What would you say at the opening? I think I went through a scenario or some scripting in the previous episode about what I say at initial meeting one and how I go through that process and how I start off by saying, like, I appreciate you getting together with me, and naturally we're going to go through a lot of information today, and I'm going to be asking lots of questions, and obviously you're going to have some questions for me, but typically at the end of the meeting we're going to come up with a decision. We're going to have to make a decision, and the decision is going to be whether or not we feel it's appropriate to move forward. And so typically I'm going to take a look at things, and if I feel that it's appropriate to move forward, I'll tell you that. But if I feel that it's really not appropriate because of the services that we offer really aren't what are properly aligned for what you're looking for, then I'm going to tell you that as well. And I would hope that, if you don't feel that the services that we provide are what you're looking for, that you would tell me that it didn't make sense. And so let's agree now that we're going to come to a conclusion, and we'll sort of make a contract so that by the end of this meeting, we'll know exactly whether or not it makes sense to move forward. Well, that scripting, that I can go through that over and over again. And literally it's because I've scripted it out. I know exactly what I'm going to say and when. I know when I'm going to present things. And so by following a scripted process, you now have a road or a track to run on. Well, when you have that track to run on, what that means is you're not going to miss the fee presentation process. You're not going to miss presenting the fee properly. So you're actually not going to, and you won't present it too soon or too late, because there's a certain sweet spot where people are kind of expecting it. And if you don't give it to them when they expect it, then they're going to be wondering, well, what's he doing? Is he beating around the bush? What's his problem? So you do want to make sure that it's scripted properly. And really, in my mind, initial meeting is all about just determining whether or not it makes sense to have a second meeting to look at the details. If anybody asks at that meeting, at the first meeting, well, what do you charge or anything like that? Really what I do is I come back and say, it's too soon for me to answer that question. We do charge fees, and they generally range, in from a few hundred to a few $1,000s, but At this point, I just don't know because I haven't seen the details. I've only seen some high-level information. If we determine that it makes sense to look at those details, then by the end of that second meeting, you'll know exactly what it means to move forward with our services. You'll know exactly what fees, what time commitment, everything. So let's carry that conversation over to our next meeting. And it basically just says to them, look, I can't answer that right now because I don't have enough information, which means they tend to appreciate that. You'd think at first that they would be thinking, well, what is he trying to avoid the topic? But you're not avoiding it. You're basically coming head on and saying, I don't know right now, because it's all based on what work is involved. And so we want to make sure that we present that fee at the right time. And that fee presentation then takes place at the second meeting. So when you can script out your process and you know exactly what to say and when, you're going to follow it to the letter. And so it does take a little bit of work at first. You want to script it out, and then you've got to test it. You've got to actually sit down and start doing it. What I would do sometimes is, go through a mock scenario, and actually, I've got some recording equipment that I do from the podcast. You could go through and you could actually record yourself doing it. And I would highly recommend doing that. Do things in this case. You're going to feel a little uncomfortable. Actually, you're going to feel a lot uncomfortable the first time you sit down to present that fee. But if you've got that track to run on, you're going to say, okay, this is my process. This is what I'm going to follow, and you're going to do it. And you're just going to say, come hell or high water, by the end of this meeting, I'm going to do it right. Well, you will find by doing that, I've had situations where people have said no, they don't want to pay the fee, but that's a good thing, because that indicates that they're not in the right mindset, or they're not really taking it seriously enough. And so I don't want to work with them if they don't want the fee. The fee, again, oftentimes is a bit of a filtering process. So definitely use the fee to your advantage, and use it and script it exactly how you want to say it. Just replay this episode many times if you want, and take the modeling of the scripting that I just went through earlier in this episode and in the previous episode, and model your own from that. So see what you can do with that. Now, so the scripting of your prospecting process, vitally important, because it makes sure you do charge the fee or go through the fee discussion at the right time. Now, let's talk about establishing your fees. So here's what's worked for me. Now, the first thing is, I go through this and I have it available. I'll just go through it, and then I'll discuss what sort of evolution has come from it. Number one, I map out what I call the a la carte plan components. So each part of the comprehensive financial plan is priced separately. So what I'll do is I'll put a fee schedule together, and I'll say, okay, here are all the different components that are involved in a comprehensive financial plan. Then I map them out and I say, now for this component, this is what the price is. And I just, list them all. Then the comprehensive financial planning programs are shown. So each comprehensive program includes an all-you-can-eat approach to financial planning. So while I go through the initial meeting, I make a note of each plan component that they would need to address. So go back to the initial meeting where we're having the discussion about all the different areas of financial planning. Well, when I identify an area on my initial data gathering sheet, when I identify an area that is important and it deals with a certain area of financial planning, I'm going to put a little note beside that. So I know, yes, that's an area that's important. Some people don't care about business planning because they're not business owners. They don't have any plan of starting a business. So I don't even bother with that. So the business planning component's not important. I skip over that. Other people don't have children, so education planning may not be an important issue. But identify the areas that are important so you can use them after the fact. When you come back to the fee presentation process, you have a natural way of progressing through that. So I identify all the different components that they would need to address. Okay, so for example, we go through, all the different areas: retirement plan, an investment plan, education plan, life insurance analysis, disability insurance analysis, long-term care insurance analysis, critical illness insurance analysis, estate planning analysis, mortgage planning analysis, tax planning analysis, corporate planning analysis, retirement income planning analysis. These are all of the areas that we identify and we touch on through the initial meeting. Now, I'll put a little note beside each one of those. So if I identify, that 6 or 7 of those are important, then I'll make sure I have a note beside that. Then when I'm presenting the fee, I'll tell them that they have 2 options. Option 1 is simply, let's look at each component individually and do them 1 or 2 at a time. So we go through and say, okay, if you want to take a look at a retirement plan, an investment plan, and an education plan, then we add all those up and say, okay, the fee for those 3 is going to be X, Y, or Z. Okay, and we just add it all up. Then we go and say, but option 2 is we can look at it from a comprehensive standpoint. So a comprehensive financial planning program looks at every aspect of their financial plan so that nothing is ever missed. Whatever is necessary to look at now will be looked at when it's important to look at it. So what I mean by that is we say, look, it's an all-you-can-eat plan. We're going to look at everything. Now, some of these things may not be important to you, may not be an issue for you right now, but they will be in the future. For example, maybe you have no need to really worry about a retirement income plan analysis because you haven't retired yet. Well, that's fine, but guess what? That day will eventually come. And when it does come, it's already included in your plan. So we go through that and we take a look at and we compare them together. Now, why do I do this? Well, I price option 1 so that once they choose 3 or more components, their fee is now higher by doing the a la carte approach as opposed to getting the all-you-can-eat plan. So it's important you do this. And I did this because the reality is it's not a gimmick or anything like that. The reality is if I'm going to sit down and somebody's going to say to me, I want to work on my retirement plan and my investment plan and my education plan, fine. We do those 3. And then they come back 6 months later and say, I now want to look at some life insurance analysis and that sort of thing. Well, guess what? If they want to look at their tax or anything like that, guess what? What ends up happening is I've got to go and revisit everything over again. So it actually takes more of my time to do it piecemeal than it does if I do it all together. So I basically price that in. I say, well, it's going to be more expensive if you do them individually. However, if you've just got one item you want to do, fine, we'll deal with that. But if you want to do more than 1 or more than 2 or even more than 3, then I'm going to price it in such a way that you'll get more value from doing them collectively together through a comprehensive plan than you will if you do them piecemeal. Because people think, well, I'll try a little bit here, a little bit there. Well, we want to price that out so that we can encourage people to, if they do have an interest in doing it all, let's do it all together. So that's why I do it, not because it's a great gimmick that can get them to into the comprehensive plan, but because the reality is it's going to take more time. So I need to be compensated for my time if I'm going to be doing an a la carte approach. I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, even 9.9 times out of 10, they will end up choosing the comprehensive plan because that's what they want in any event. What they're getting right now is probably a piecemeal approach. And they know that. They feel that, especially after having gone through the initial process with you. They begin to appreciate the fact that you're looking at everything from a comprehensive standpoint, whereas maybe their previous advisor is only looking at their investments and their insurance. And that's all they care about because they're not charging a fee to look at their financial planning. Well, the reality is people want financial planning. They don't want products. They know products are important in order to implement the plan and to make the plan a reality, but they just want the right products. They don't care which products they get. So, talking about the features and benefits of the products are really, it's a secondary issue. They want to make sure that the analysis is done up front that tells them that they even need the product to begin with. Let's identify what's important to look at. And let's look at things from a comprehensive standpoint. So that's why the pricing model that I use is set up that way, because I just realized that if I do it piecemeal, it's going to take me more time because every time I come back to that piece, I'm going to have to look at everything again anyway. So it's just going to end up costing people more. So now we've gone through, the establishing of your fees, and as far as pricing, how much do you charge? That for me has been an interesting experience because when I first started out, I needed to make sure that I was higher than what most people would do. And a reason why is because you need to identify yourself as a professional. You need to identify yourself as different. So if I priced myself like everybody else, which was either for free or very, very low, then people kind of caught on to, well, it's not really serious. All of a sudden, when I increased my fees and I priced it pretty high, and I'm talking like, maybe $1,000 when I first started, I can't remember back that far, but let's say it was around $1,000 for a comprehensive plan. Well, that was a big number back then. Now, my average fee for a plan is probably in and around $2,500 to $3,500, and I've had them go as high as $10,000. But that's just because of the level of work that I'm doing. So I get a chance to take a look at everything in advance through this process so I can assess what the proper appropriate fee is going to be. So, pricing your fee is interesting. So the one thing that I've done as well, and I'll just share this with you, is that I've never increased my annual renewal fees for a client. So if they started with me 10 years ago, and whatever fee they were on back then, that fee is what they're paying today. I haven't increased it on them. And, that's kind of my way of saying I value the fact that you've been a client for so long, and I'm not necessarily going to increase it because people have asked me, well, what about the annual fees? I know the initial fee, it's kind of set. Well, I say to them, look, whatever fee you start at is the fee you are going to remain at. And the only way that that fee is ever going to increase is if I increase that fee for everybody across the board who's at that point. So in my experience, so far I've never increased the fee for anybody. Now, that doesn't mean my fees haven't increased, because as new clients come on, I will be increasing fees, and I tend to go every year I increase my fees a little bit. Now, I'm doing that for two reasons. One, because the value of what we provide is constantly increasing, and I'm constantly adding new technologies and new processes and new things into my financial planning programs. So, it justifies the higher fee. And number two, I'm trying to find that point at which I get resistance. And I'll be honest, every year I increase the fees and I don't get any resistance. And so I keep on saying to myself, geez, I'm not increasing them enough. I'm not increasing them enough, because ultimately I think you want to get to a point where your fees are high enough where people really have to think about it, but not too high where they say no. I haven't got to that point yet. And I don't know why that is, but I don't really have a lot of resistance or any resistance once I go through this process to the fees that I'm charging. So again, I encourage you to really take to heart what we've just talked about so that you can start incorporating those fees into your practice. Now, commit to presenting your fee to the next qualified prospect you meet with. So once you've gone through this whole process, you now pretty much have a framework for what you need to do in order to properly present the fee. You know that you can do the work. You know the planning process is good. You know you're a good financial planner. The difficulty is getting that information across to a client so that they're saying yes to a fee that you charge them. So bottom line is, if you don't charge a fee to the next prospect you work with, you never will know. So I get it's a terrifying process. When I had to present my first fee, I think I talked about it in a previous episode, my first fee was actually, when I incorporated it, I decided to go to fees. We went to our existing clients. So not only was it not a new person, it was an existing client that's been working with me up to that point for free. So I went to them and I presented my fee and I said, look, we now need to start charging a fee for the financial planning work that we do, because we're just not getting compensated for that, and we need to do that. And I got a lot of resistance. And I tell you, my first two meetings were horrible, because they actually, I lost them as clients. And I thought, oh, Jesus, I am definitely on the wrong path here. Then my third client, that's when they came in and they actually said, thank you. And I said, no, I don't think you understand. I'm not going to be charging you for what you weren't being charged for before. I'm now going to be charging your credit card. And they said, oh yeah, I know, I get that. And I'm saying thank you, because now I know you're not going to go out of business. Now I know that you're going to be around for the long run, because I can't afford to not have you as my financial planner. That blew me away. That's the experience you're going to start to have. People are going to start to appreciate and respect what it is that you're doing for them, and the relationship is going to get stronger and stronger. But I get the first one is a terrifying experience. You're sitting there, you know it's coming. The client has no idea, because they're coming in for either a regular review meeting if you're going to be going back to your existing clients. And we can talk about that at a later show, where, how do you present to your existing clients versus new clients? Because new clients, well, they don't know any difference. So, to them, it's all good. But your existing clients, well, they haven't been paying a fee up to that point. Now you're going to be asking them to pay a fee. So that can be a challenging time. But especially if you come from a commission-based model, if you're coming from that point, you've never had to disclose fees before. You've never had to talk about it before. If you did, there was always these easy ways around it where it kind of got hidden in everything. And that's the problem with embedded fees, is they do get hidden. And so people think they're actually getting a lot of stuff for free, when in actual fact they're not. Well, long story short, we kind of get that. You're listening to this podcast because you get this as well. But the long story short is that after a while, when you want to start to do things and people get resistance from not being able to do it because there's going to be deferred sales charges or there's going to be chargebacks or something like that, suddenly they start questioning things and they don't trust you as much. And then there's a negative spiral that happens with that. So what you want to do, as I said before, script out your process and follow the script. This ensures you get the fee presentation process. You get to that point where you're actually presenting the fee, and you're going to be amazed at the result. Once you get your first fee under your belt, you will be excited to write that financial plan. You will put your heart and soul into that plan to ensure it's worth the price that the client paid for it. Remember though, they're not paying for the plan, they're paying for the financial planning process, or to put it another way, the planning experience. So this is important that you understand that. It's the process they're paying for. They want somebody to walk them, handhold them, and walk them through the whole process and to analyze everything to make sure that they are on track and they're willing to pay for that. Ultimately, they don't care about their investments, which investments you choose. They just want good investments. They don't care which insurance company you choose. They just want a good quality product. They recognize that when you're working for them and they're paying you, you're going to be looking for the best products. You're going to be looking for the best implementation tools. So script it out, get that first fee under your belt. You've got to commit to that. So if you know you have over the next few weeks, if you can spend some time on going through and mapping out what's the process that you go through, what's going to happen at my first meeting, put agendas together, what's going to happen at the second meeting, and then get to the point you just have to present the fee, because once you've got the plan to write, you're going to write it very well. And how you present the plan, again, I recommend that you do it in 2 stages, but how you do that is up to you. But the hard part is meeting number 2, where you've actually got to present the fee. And the second hard part is meeting number 1, where you have to talk about a lot of things, but not give them the fee, because you don't want them at that point. It's just too soon to know for certain. You want to take a look at the details. And I encourage you to tell them at their first meeting, don't bring your detailed statements with you. I don't want the details. It's going to be a high-level conversation. Again, doing that makes you just different in the marketplace, because right now I guarantee 99% of the advisors out there, when they are meeting with a person, they're going to say, okay, bring your statements, bring your insurance policy so we can take a look at them. Well, you want to differentiate yourself and make yourself look different. So what do? You say, look, don't bring those. I'm not concerned about the details right now. You have an idea of what it is that you have, but I don't want to look at the details, because we're not going to be talking about product at this point. We're going to be talking about you, and talking about you is what's important. I want to get to know what you want before we take a look at what you've got. I can analyze that after the fact, but I need to find out more about you. I tell you, it's a breath of fresh air, and prospective clients will really, really embrace that. Then map out what it is you're going to say, script it out so you know exactly what it is, practice it, go through it over and over and over and over. Even if you have to, put together a bit of call it an advisor script that you have in front of you. Now, not the wording and all that sort of stuff, but sort of, bullet points or checkpoints that are going to remind you to go through things in a certain order. Map that out so okay, this is what it's going to be. And then it just goes very simply, and I'll go through that the process one more time. So they come in. The purpose for the first meeting is to really kind of educate and discuss, okay? So that's really what you want to be doing, is just educating yourself and discussing their situation. Then they come in, they go through, you talk about their issues, you talk about their concerns, you map out everything, but you talk about them in different categories. So the different categories are all the different, the planning components that we talked about, the retirement plan, the education plan, investment, and you ask them how they feel about that, each component of their overall affairs. And so I've actually put together sort of a whole process that I go through, and a questionnaire and all that sort of stuff. And I encourage you to do the same thing, where you map out, this is what you talk about. Ask them in the questionnaire, what do you know about, how do you feel about, your tax situation? Or explain to me about your tax situation. And do you know anything about it? Are you using all the legal tax loopholes? What are you using? Ask them these questions and give them a way of answering where they either circle yes, no, or don't know. And oftentimes you're going to see people are going to be circling the don't know quite a bit, because they don't know. They don't know how their portfolio is allocated. They don't know when they want to retire, what they can retire on, if they're going to, they just don't know these questions. Well, again, that's what the planning process is. So that's what you're going to be doing in the initial meeting 1, is overview, high level, 30,000 foot. Establishing, starting at the beginning. I appreciate you coming in today. Naturally, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, on certain financial planning topics. Obviously, you're going to be having questions for me, and questions are going to come up along the way, and I encourage you to have that communication back and forth with me. And then typically by the end of the meeting, we're each going to establish whether or not we're going to decide to move forward together to a next meeting. So typically at the end of the meeting, I'll know whether or not it makes sense to have a second meeting to look at the details. I'll tell you if I do feel that it is worthwhile, and if I don't think it's worthwhile, I'll tell you that as well. And number 2, you can have a chance at the end of the meeting to say to me, you know what, I either really love what you have to say, and I want to move forward and take a look at the second meeting. There's no obligation for the second meeting, and I get that. but now I want to make sure that you have a look at the details. Or they're going to say, well, you know what, I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's what I'm looking for, and that's fine. You can part company, but air that out, get that out in the open up front, because that's going to give them some comfort in knowing that they have a way of saying no, and it's not going to be threatening because you're going to be looking for that answer. Then you get to the second meeting. Now, in between the first and second meeting, I would recommend that you do send out some sort of a communication that just basically says, you know what, here's maybe a summary of what we talked about at our meeting, because that gives them an understanding that, you know what, you were listening. And if your summary has some key points that they were really their hot buttons, really the things that were important to them, then again, that's just going to tell them that you are listening to what they have to say. So when they come back in the second meeting with a listing of different briefcases and file folders of all the information you've asked them to bring in, and at the end of the first meeting, I encourage you to give them a checklist and say, look, go through this checklist, bring all this information in. They're going to come in with a pretty thick stack. And so they come in, and the agenda for the second meeting is just going through the details. Take a look at every single document that they bring in: tax returns, investment statements, retirement plans, company benefits, group benefits, all this sort of stuff. You want to look at it all. Just touch it all. Make sure you've got it. If there's anything missing on the checklist, their wills or taxes or anything like that, then just make a note of that so that they can always follow up if it makes sense to move forward. But then at the second meeting, you're really going to go through and say, okay, now I've got all this information. I've seen what you have. I have a better understanding about what it is you want to accomplish. At that point, you say to them, look, I either feel that we can help you, or I really don't think we're the firm for you. If you say, I don't really feel we're the firm for you because it's not really our sweet spot where we're going, then you want to make sure that you have somebody you can refer them to, or at least a place that you can refer them to. But if you do say, you know what, I think everything that we offer is ideally suited for what you're looking for, and I know we can do a great job and you're going to find a lot of value in that, then that just kind of encourages, okay, the next step is, what's the fee? And then you can say, okay, for the fee, we've got two different ways. We can go an a la carte route. We can go the comprehensive route, go through the charges if you did it a la carte, add them all up. And what I do is I just simply say, these are all the areas that we identified were a concern of yours. I add up the fee for all those areas. It generally comes out to be 3 or 4 times what a comprehensive fee is. Then I come back and say, now you can do those individually. And this is what the overall, if you did everything over the course of the next few years, this is what your overall fee would be. Or we can do everything at once and never have to worry about missing anything as it comes up. And this is what my fee is going to be, and have it priced accordingly. And then they're at that point going to say yes or no. Put your letter of engagement together. When they do say yes, have them sign it. You sign it. You write in what the fees are. Everything's laid out in black and white. They've never had that before. Nobody's ever laid out everything they've said in black and white so that they've got a document that they can take with them. It's absurd to me that people wouldn't do that. It's amazing how as soon as we brought in a letter of engagement, that letter of engagement actually became a marketing tool for us. Because one of the questions we could ask in advance was, well, when you signed your letter of engagement with your previous advisor, did it lay out what their fee schedule was? Well, then they look at you funny, like, what do you mean letter of engagement? There was never a letter of engagement. Well, a letter of engagement is a powerful tool. So make sure you have that letter of engagement because it will set you apart. So then they sign the letter of engagement. Now you're off and running. Now you're basically all set to go through, write the financial plan, have them come in for the first draft, have them come in for the second review, the second plan presentation meeting, where you're going to be going through all the other areas of the financial plan. And I think we talked about that at the previous episode. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go back to that episode because it goes through in great detail what we look at each plan presentation meeting. And then once you've got everything done, now you've got a complete financial plan for the client, and they're ecstatic. They're happy with everything that they've got. They've had a great experience along the way, and they know everything's taken care of. When you make the recommendations that they implement certain things, 99% of the time they're going to say, okay, let's do it, because they paid for that advice, and all of a sudden everything just starts to work. So, from a business planning standpoint, your revenue per client is going to go way up because people are going to simply start implementing more because the planning process is going to make them realize that it does make sense. So that really, covers it right now. So from starting from scratch, if I were starting from scratch, this is the initial process that I would go through. I would gather all these together. I would script out my process, and I would put it all together so that you have a track to run on. And then that is going to allow you to make sure that you're presenting the fee properly. You know what? You may stumble a couple times. I would recommend that you just take the next prospect that comes your way, go through that process with them. If they, I'll just a comment or a thought that just came to my mind. I do remember that, when I first started doing this, you are spreading things out a little bit more, and people sometimes they figure, because they're kind of conditioned to it, they figure that they're going to know whether or not they're going to move forward with you after the first meeting. Well, when you say to them, okay, we're going to take this and take this slowly, good things take time. It's going to take a couple meetings for us to get to know whether or not, you will sense that you're actually pushing them back a little bit, because when they come in for the first meeting, it's kind of like they want answers right then and there. And here you are pushing them away. Well, I found that by pushing them away a little bit, they come back even stronger when it's appropriate, when they recognize, wow, I really want this, that sense of scarcity that, wow, I really want it now, and I want it to get going quickly, and you're pushing them back. Then when they finally come back, it's like, okay, can we get this started? Can we get this started? And then all of a sudden it's going to go very well. And so the motivation level is going to be extremely high. So take advantage of that. And, hopefully that's given you some a framework that you can use to develop your own process and develop your scripting. Get out there, start testing. I'd love to hear how it goes. I'd love to hear about when you do your first presentation. Go to the comment section of the website and say, hey, did my first one, here was what my fee was. Client said, yes, or whatever, or did my first one and it completely flopped. And this is what the story was. I want to know both sides, because I've been there. I've experienced it all. If you want, email me directly. If you don't want to have it on the website, but you know what? Let's just get this going, because people need to understand that others are going through this as well. And we can all go through this together. And, I've been through it before. I know it works. I know it's a fantastic model to use. The quality of your clientele just is elevated tremendously. Share your experiences, because other people will probably have questions along the way. And if they start seeing that there's other people doing it, that will maybe encourage them to do it. And we can all really build and elevate this industry to become a better place. So go to feebasedfinancialplanningmastery.com now and click on this episode. There you can post any questions that you want me to answer, if there's any topics for upcoming episodes, or if you want, just email me directly. But, let's communicate, let's talk back and forth. If you get a chance, I'd love it if you could go over to iTunes and just put a rating there for that. I know we've had a couple 5-star ratings come on so far, and I'm really happy about that. That was completely unexpected. So I'd love it if you can go and rate the podcast, because I'm having fun doing this. I'm sensing that there's a lot of people, we're getting a lot of traction. We're getting some exposure all over the world. I know we've got people listening in the UK, in New Zealand, in India, in the United States, in Canada, across Canada. So it's just a wonderful experience for me. I'm building some great relationships with some great planners out there, and I really think it's turning into something great. So as I say, this is really just has been a hobby for me that I started, that has sort of taken off. I'm really happy about that. And if there's anything I can do to help make your practice a better practice, just let me know. Ask any questions, and I'm more than happy to help. So check out the Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery. Check out the resources, recommended resources that are there, the toolbox, because I've put everything that I'm using is there. Click on those links and start building yourself a better practice.
You've been listening to Scott E. Plaskett, a certified financial planner and industry veteran in the world of fee-based financial planning. Want free resources to help you build a better fee-based financial planning firm? Visit ilovefinancialplanning.com right now to register for Scott's Inner Circle email list, where you'll get front-of-the-line updates on the latest resources that are driving profits to Scott's fee-based financial planning practice. All of the resources are pulled directly from the highly acclaimed Fee-Based Financial Planning Mastery Academy. Go now to ilovefinancialplanning.com. Build a better business and make more money with your fee-based financial planning practice today.